Hey guys, we want to thank Cap City Tees for sponsoring today's episode. That's right, Cap City Tees, the #1 printing company in Sacramento. Well, at least in our hearts. Cap City Tees is an amazing company putting out amazing quality at, most importantly, amazing prices. They are in line with any major retailer out there. Now, if you're in need of getting a shirt screen printed or embroidered, whether that's your local soccer team or basketball team or volleyball team or all the way up to corporate clothing, Cap City Tees is the place to go. So if you're in need or if you're in want, reach out to Cap City Tees at capcitytees.com or capcitytees@gmail.com. That's capcitytees@gmail.com. Welcome to the Hard Money Show, where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. It is a good day when I can get my close friend, little sis from college, my comrade, my business, my inspiration in life, the person that I want to be when I grow up, my little sis Carol on the line. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. That was so sweet.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
flattered to
we
be
need
here.
we need people to look up to in life, and I figure if I'm gonna look up to anyone, it might as well be you. So thank you for being on. Very excited.
I'm super flattered. Thank you for having me.
So I know you've listened to the podcast a little bit. I know you're extremely busy, so you can't listen to all 30 episodes that we have on. Cough, cough. If you haven't listened to all 30 episodes, go ahead and start binging that because they're amazing. But normally what we do is we bring on people who are in real estate, who are in the loan industry and things like that. But this season, I still want to do that, but I wanted to branch out a little bit, and I wanted to bring on people who are essentially associated with the real estate industry and maybe not directly in it. And what I mean by that is somebody who's a realtor or a broker or a loan officer, right? Or something like that. I wanted to bring on a title company or even like a landscaper or someone who cleans pools or things like that, right? And so I was thinking about this, everybody, and I've given this a lot of consideration. And I said, who can I bring on? Who do I know who's killing it in life? And I thought, oh, yeah, that's right. I got my little sis out in LA area. She's in architecture. Now, granted, we've had this conversation. I know you're a little standoffish because you don't do residential architecture, but
Right.
you are in it. And so I thought this could be a great insight into kind of your industry and, to learn a little bit about you and mostly just kind of have an hour where we get to catch up a little bit because it's been a while since we've talked. And I thought this would be a great way to do it. I like to do most of my conversations with people where I put them online so everybody can hear about them. So that's where we're at.
Okay, I look forward to it.
So, we went to Sac State together, and I guess it must have been 2010. No, that's not right. 2007, 8, 9. Is that when you came?
I started in 2008,
Okay.
and I think I met you that year
Okay.
when I was a freshman.
So I'm a little off. 2008 going 2008 going into 2009. And at that time, what were you majoring in?
Interior design.
Interior
Excuse me, I'm
design.
just getting over a cold.
Oh, it's all
Interior
good.
design. Really starting to focus in, but when you're 18, you go to college, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. So it was definitely an experience to be able to jump head first.
I've had somebody on who their background is interior design as well, but they did it in the capacity of real estate where, staging and things like that. And then, for rebuilding. And I always thought that was such an interesting, there's so many components to real estate that you can learn and be successful in, right? And one of the ones that I feel like I'm lacking in is that interior design because it's just, I like things relatively neat and tidy, but I can't say that I have an eye for making a room look like amazing by any means. And so I've always thought that was really interesting. And so you were in high school and you're like, all right, this is what I'm going into college for. And remind me or remind everyone, where are you from before you went to Sac State in Sacramento?
I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised Valley girl. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but born and raised in Los Angeles. Um, I knew I wanted to go into the architecture field. Oh man, maybe I was like 6 or 7.
Mm,
So I've known from a young age, and I think that's definitely because my father's an architect. I have a few aunts that are architects, so it's kind of just in the family, and
mm,
we're exposed to it pretty early. And going through high school, I always said, I'm going to go to school and get my interior design degree. Then I'm going to go get my master's. Then I'm going to do my licensing. Then I'm going to own my business. And we're just taking one step at a time.
So were you the kind of kid, were you a Lincoln Log, Lego building block building like little buildings when were you that kind of kid?
I was that kind of kid.
Yeah, you're like you're just in there and
I
then
was I was a nerd from day one.
that's awesome. I love it. And we're I don't know, it was like interior. So this is what I don't fully understand, right? I assume in as an undergrad degree you can get a degree in architecture, right? But you decided to go interior design. Is that typical?
Not necessarily. So even though I call myself a nerd from a young age, I decided to go to Sac State because it was the farthest school that I was accepted to. I
All right.
wanted to get out of the valley. I needed to escape that kind of social bubble that I was in.
Mm,
I believe at the time Sacramento State had the second best interior design program in the state
mm,
behind Long Beach.
wow.
So it was a great segue to kind of move into, knowing it's a great program, it's established, the
Mm,
professors all own or work in their own firms as well. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a common thing to do because a lot of people that go into interior design majors stay in that sector.
mhm.
I'm more of the one that kind of went the opposite direction.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, it's interesting because I went to when I was applying to schools, traditionally I was looking at kinesiology, physiology. And so at the time, Sac State had one of the top three kinesiology programs in the state. They're really, and that's why originally I went there. And so obviously I did not stay in that major. I switched out into something I was a little more passionate about. But um, we are kind of drawn to the same school, and people they talk about Sac State. I think because it's a state school, and the structuring of schooling. There's a lot of hierarchy. State schools, then you have public or private schools, and you have UCs, and then Ivy Leagues, and you have all these schools in between. And I think Sac State gets kind of a bad rap, but there is a lot of really great programs that are at Sac State, and I think they've continued to grow. We're in the capital, they're doing really well. I don't know when's the last time that you've been there, but I've driven by there probably in the last year, and I was like, wow, this looks super nice now.
Really, yeah, I haven't been there since maybe 2018 was the last time I went to
Mm.
visit.
Yeah,
It's been a
they've
while.
done a lot of crazy stuff there. So you're getting your interior design degree. What was that like for you? I mean, was that a fun experience for you? And has it been applicable at all to what you're currently doing?
Oh, definitely. I use my background nearly every day
Mm,
that with my architecture firm. Um, it's kind of funny that you ask. You know me, that I was in school. I was never the one that went out and did
mm,
the typical college nights. I
mm-hmm,
was in the library working on plans, on sketches, drawings all the time.
mm-hmm,
Um, so I met you, I think, through a mutual friend, and then I went into sorority. And even in the sorority, I was still very much in the study groups in the
mm.
library. So it was a very hard major and you have to dedicate yourself 100%.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a major that you go into and can skip class
Mm-hmm.
or um, not do your schoolwork or anything like that. It's a very time consuming, dedicated type of field.
Mm-hmm. That's yeah. Kinesiology is obviously like that as well because you have the bios, you have the anatomies, and all of that stuff. But then when I switched over to communication, that was vastly different experience. Especially, I have this conversation with my wife from time to time because the UK schooling system is so different than the American schooling system. And when I switched from kinesiology to communication, I lost about a year of schooling because the classes I took they were technically like the math classes I took and science classes were higher level than what were required for communication. So I had to go back and take different math and communication classes, even though the ones that I took were of a higher grade. So it was the weirdest. Yeah, it was a very weird
Yeah,
experience.
that's very strange.
Yeah, I was like, this doesn't. It'd be like taking like basic math or like trigonometry and then going back and they're like, no, that doesn't count. You got to go take freaking like you got to take basic math, right? Like adding. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. They're like, well, that's how it is. So, but yeah, I've had both of those experiences of being like, wow, this is really a demanding and you can't miss any classes. And then the other side where you're kind of like, well, our main project this semester is to give a speech on something, so I think I'll be all right. And I don't know how you
Yeah.
were able to do this, but I always went, especially because I was so active at the university and I was working and things like that. I would front load everything and I would work as hard as I possibly could and get as much extra credit as I could. So then I wouldn't have to go to class the last like 3 weeks of school because you're allowed to, they'd be like, you can miss so many
Oh,
days, things like
goodness.
that.
You're so bad.
Yeah, but that it worked because I had such a high grade. I could miss classes and then would have a little more time to study as well because I wasn't like because you're not learning a lot, at least like in the communication major at the end of the semester, right? So either
That's
way,
true.
enough about me and my experience. So you go through the the interior design program, and then pretty soon after that, you go to get your master's, right?
Yeah, immediately after graduation, in 2013, that fall. So we graduated in May, I believe, and in August, I
Mm.
was starting my graduate program for a master's in architecture.
And where were you for that?
I came back down to LA
Mm.
to a small private school called Woodbury University. Really, really small
Mm.
private school. I think my first year, because it was a 3-year program for us, my first year had maybe like 8 other peers.
Mm. That is
Um,
that is pretty small. I think in my master cohort we had, I want to say at least 15. I would say about 15.
I love how master programs are a lot smaller.
Mm.
It's very focused.
Hmm. Yeah, it was a much better experience education wise because it's like, all right, we're working on exactly the thing that I want to work on. It's
Hmm.
very high level material. So you feel like you're actually learning something that brings a value to your industry. And you're working with all the people who are like minded with you. And keep in mind, I mean, to go to the university that I went to was 70 grand a year. So people
I feel
people
ya.
yeah, people are not really there to like it was extremely fun and an amazing experience, but like everybody that's there is pretty serious about what we're doing. And for us it was really cool because we had I remember there's two people distinctly, well, three. There was this other guy who was kind of a lot like me, and we used to joke around a lot. We had these running jokes in class. And there was this other guy who had been in business for the better part of 25, 30 years and decided to come back to get his master's, who I really liked. And then there was this other lady who she had, I think, like 14 associate degrees
Oh,
and
wow.
no bachelor's degree, and then got into the master's program. which I didn't know that you could do that, but apparently you
That's
can. Yeah.
I had no idea you could do that either.
Yeah, and so it was really interesting. So it was like, you meet a lot of people in your undergrad, but it was just such a different like networking experience going in that, and then you're really learning stuff. And so how did you three first off, most grad programs are 2 years, right? So your guys was a three. That's pretty
Right.
intensive. Um, what was that like for you?
Oh my goodness. It was a roller coaster of an amazing experience. So I was there from 2013 to 2016.
Mm,
And one of the main reasons I joined this program, um, because I think I got into University of Arizona. I got into an art school in San Francisco. I got into another private school, but Woodbury, one of their programs, because in the master's program, the semesters are laid out for you
mm,
and you'll move through them. And there's a summer program to where you go and study abroad for 3 months.
mm,
So that was the main kicker for me to be able to join this program and know I'm going to go and see architecture in Eastern Europe. And we went into Germany, to Poland, to Spain. We went to all of these beautiful places. And that was by far the best experience I had in grad school.
mm.
But if you're going back to the studio life and the daily grind, again, if I definitely thought interior design program was intense, I would multiply that by at least 100 for a grad program for
Mhm.
architecture. You live at your studio desk. And it's funny because they tell you this before you start the program. They say goodbye to your social life, tell your family you'll see them in a few years, it'll be worth it. And by the time I had my degree in my hand and I had that awesome hood that you get on the day of graduation, it was 100% worth it.
Yeah, that's pretty well, so kind of touching back on your abroad experience, there was a period of time where I was like, all right, I was either going to go get a PhD, and I was pretty close to submitting applications for that. I had everything lined up, and then I thought, and I really want to do a podcast about this at some point. My issue with academia and in general with kind of how pompous professors are. So I do want to do that at some point, but um, either way, I decided not to go that direction. I'd considered going to an MBA program, and I had looked at Pacific where I went to school, and they had a portion as well where you had to go abroad. For I'm not entirely sure what they did when they went, but a summer thing where they did that, and I thought, oh, that would be a super cool experience. It's funny. I think our friend Rachel, and my wife would have a really good time traveling Europe. That's, like I said, my wife is from England, because they always are like, I tell them new is always better. I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to go see any old churches or buildings or
Oh,
anything like that. I'm like, I get it. Like
no.
they're pretty, but I get it. I would rather go drink some gin, go do a gin tour thing. But they always want to do that. So I bet you guys would have a great time just looking at
It
everything
would
that's
be a
over there.
great girls' trip.
Hmm. Um, what would you say was the hardest part of, that program for you?
Hmm, that's a really good question. I don't necessarily know if there's one answer to that. The I would say maybe the hardest was actually the lifestyle change
Mm,
that you don't think about when you step into a higher education program. I the hours that I worked were very intensive. The the classes were very intensive. It really took a toll on my body the first semester because I
mm,
did not understand how much stress I was under. So that was a pretty big difference that you have to learn very quickly.
Hmm.
You have to learn how to manage stress and pressure at the same time, and which goes hand in hand in my field. I feel like um, my dad always says you can control pressure, but you can't control stress.
Mm.
And so you never want to leave anything to the last minute, right? You
Hmm.
always turn up the pressure right when you get that project. You get as much information as you can, and then you start building your plan. But going back into school in my grad program, you work on one project the whole semester. You get like the first day, you get your syllabus, you
Mm.
kind of get your site that they hand you. You get to go on a field trip to analyze that site, and you start doing your research and move on from there. So it's how long are the semesters now? It's like a 3 to 4 month semester
Yeah.
working on one solid project. So
Hmm.
the detailing that you do
Intensive.
is yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I can definitely, it was going from undergrad, which I was extremely busy at. I ran multiple clubs, I worked multiple jobs. I tried to balance relationships ineffectively most of the time, but I tried. And when I went to grad school, I stopped doing everything outside of work, right? I still had to make money, so I still worked. And then I was a graduate assistant for half of my program, so I taught public speaking, and that was a whole new kind of learning thing of learning how to grade and holding office hours and things like that. But you get really immersed into the program in general, and the work load feels like there was one semester at Sac State where I took 21 units. That's what it felt
Oh,
like
wow.
every semester. It felt like 21 units of school, because even though I only had, I think, two or three classes a semester, the amount of reading and reports and cumulative projects that we had to do, it really did feel like all of your free time outside of having to make money to survive was dedicated to that program. And um I could see how that would be extremely stressful and hard to, I don't want to say hard to cope with, but definitely a learning curve.
Yeah, I would say that was one of the hardest things. And for my program, it's not just doing one project the whole semester. That's just your studio
Hmm.
project. So you have, or at least I had, visualization classes that taught you different, uh, man, like perspective, geometry drawings. We learned structures. We did
It's funny when
field
you
work.
say visualization class. In my head, as like obviously a person has no clue what you went through. It's like, all right, today we're gonna sit outside of this building and we're gonna stare at it for 30 minutes, and then we're gonna talk about it. Like that's the visualization class. So I'm sure it was much more difficult than that.
So my visualization class, going a little bit into it, it's all 2D drawing,
Mm-hmm.
turning and then trying to pretty much trick your eye into creating 3D out of 2D.
Mm-hmm.
So you learn different techniques, different line weights, how things are go in and out of each other.
Nice.
It's it's a whole mind
Mm-hmm.
mind game that you're playing the entire semester, just
Sure.
one class.
I think that would be really fun. And when I was in high school, we had, I'm sure you guys did as well, we had elective classes that you can take. And outside of one semester, well, 2 semesters where I took auto and welding, and then I took home ec because I love to cook. Um, I took art for 4 years. And so I always really liked that. I really always really liked drawing. I liked painting. I wouldn't say I was particularly good at it. I just thought it was really enjoyable. But it feels like that would be a really cool class, because I did feel like the part of art where I wasn't good at, what like in making and taking that leap from it being like Okay, that looks all right to like, wow, that's really good. Is that exact sort of understanding of, how do shapes form and how do they work together and the different perspectives of them, I think would have been very helpful in that sort of thing. Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious, I mean, this is just like a hypothetical, but let's say, I assume this, program you went to was a very good program, right?
Yeah.
Somebody gets their architecture degree in their undergrad. Let's just start here. Do you have to have a master's to move forward in this field?
No, definitely not. I would say the majority of people in this field actually go to school for their undergrad. They get a 5-year degree
Wow.
for architecture.
Really? All is it
Um,
always 5 years?
Typically, it's 5 years.
Whoa.
I'm not sure if the curriculum has changed for that. There is a kind of a formula you have to follow when getting a license. So the program that you go into has to be an accredited program.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just be a school that's like, oh, we offer some drafting classes and then
Mm-hmm.
that'll suffice for your program.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's an accredited state program. And um, so I would say, yeah, a lot of my peers have gone to school for undergrad for architecture and then have just come out, worked a certain amount of years that they've put in before being able to apply for their license.
Mm.
And that is a whole nother ballgame.
So I'm curious of why is it so intensive? Because ultimately, isn't the kind of burden on the structure actually like not collapsing fall on a structural engineer?
So that's a really great question. Architects, so in the name, if you look at it, architecture, you have the art part and then you have the tech. So you are combining both design fields along with all of the technical information. And architecture is a big blanket pretty much on top of all of our other consultants that we work with. So everything would be fed from the architect down the line to all of our engineers. So we as architects are responsible for public life and safety.
Mhm.
That is the number one criteria for all architects. And to be able to do that, we have to have a range of knowledge across all of the different sectors within the field of electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, plumbing, civil, structural. We obviously don't have our degrees within those specific fields. That's why we hire our team,
Mhm.
but we are aware of everything that they encompass.
Got it.
So the one of the projects I'm on right now, it's a ground up building out here in the valley, and we are using all of our consultants um, that I just named off, plus landscape and um, there's geotechnical. So there's a lot that falls under the architect.
And does I guess I'm just trying to understand a little bit. Are you guys in a way like the project manager, or are there project managers on and you guys are kind of like another level of oversight?
So I would say we're the team lead.
Okay.
We're the team lead. So if you look at it in that way, everybody falls after us.
Okay.
So all questions would then come back to the architect to answer
Mm,
to give back to the team.
okay. That makes sense. So you graduate your master's program very, very long time ago now. And
I
you
know it's been like 7 years.
I know
It's
it's
crazy.
every time I think back of how long it's been we've been out of school, it's wild. So, how long do you leave there and go work with your dad? Is that what happens?
Yeah. So my story went like I did a lot of internships in high school. I did a lot of internships in college. and then throughout my undergrad or throughout my graduate program. So when I was able to finish my graduate program, I felt confident enough to be able to step into my father's firm,
Mm-hmm.
knowing I have worked for other people throughout my time. So I
Right.
thought it was very, very important that I didn't just go into my dad's firm
Mm-hmm.
blind. And it was very important to me to have other bosses and other leadership. And I think that's important when stepping into a family business.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
but yeah, I went straight into my father's firm as the junior designer, the usually the one that draws the toilet rooms, learns how to draw the elevations.
Mm.
Um, you start learning the basics and you start learning the codes.
And is that a
And that
is that
is
a entry level position typically, or would there be anything below that, or is that kind of where you start normally?
that that's typically where you start.
Mm.
Um,
Keep in mind,
that's
my only knowledge base of what you do is from Ted Mosby, so
okay.
that's all. That's the
Okay.
only knowledge base that I really have.
Okay. So I would call, if we're being really blunt and honest here, I would call junior designers your grunt years.
Mm.
That's when you are absorbing as much information as you can day in and day out. You are drawing everything that the lead teams do not want to draw anymore. So it's very important to take those years seriously because
Hmm.
that's your foundation. So because we live by codes in our field. There are certain restrictions around everything.
Hmm.
The um, the main one that we follow would be our accessibility codes and making sure that everything is equal facilitation, that they're everybody, no matter disability or not, can use the space that we design.
Mm.
So that includes how high your grab bars are in your toilet room, your sink locations, your towel dispensers, your how high when you go into a reception area, the size of the desk, the height of the desk. So those are the times that you learn all of that basic information.
Hmm.
And so that typically will take, if you're absorbing every day and you're going in enthusiastic and you want to learn, um, I don't think there's a reason you shouldn't learn that within a year or so.
Well, the thing I like about this structure in general, and maybe this is kind of a similar structure in, corporate world or wherever it is, but I like that the same attention, detail, and enthusiasm is given to the toilet room as the main conference room or whatever it is you're designing in this commercial property, right? And as a person who, whenever I travel, I try to make sure I know where all the bathrooms are because I just have the biggest fear that I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom and it's not gonna be around. Um, I really appreciate that, there. And if I remember going to Portugal for a business trip, and we were eating at this restaurant, and I needed to use the restroom, and I went to the back where I assumed that it would be, and they're like, no, no, it's downstairs. And I had to go down these stairs, which obviously, like, not everybody would be able to do that. These windy stairs, I go down, and then I go into this tiny bathroom, which, keep in mind, people in Portugal are, for the most part, a lot smaller than Americans, but it was not very accessible. So I'm very happy to live in America where our bathrooms are taken seriously.
Are
Thank you
rather
guys.
large,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're nice.
There's a
Hmm.
certain code that they have to even be certain sizes.
Hmm.
But that's really interesting that you say that too, because along with my travels when I was studying abroad, we do notice all the different types of structures and how the lifestyles are different just
Hmm.
based off of the functions of
Right.
each space. So when I was in Australia a few years ago, I had a very similar experience, and the toilet room was very, very small, and the sink was very small.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Wow, this doesn't meet code." And I was like, "Wait, I'm not in the United States."
Right. Yeah, it was funny. We
So,
were just visiting in the UK, and we were at one of our friends' house, and we're upstairs in their restroom, and they have two separate faucets. One is hot and one is cold. Um, so you can't get one of them and make it warm, right? And so
oh,
yeah,
interesting.
it was really odd. And then I was in there and I was really tired, so I had both of them on, and I was like, I want to wash my face. How do I do this? And I was like legitimately like trying to capture both of them with one like cold and hot in one hand and then wash my face. Apparently there's a more effective way to do that, but at the time I was like, this is the only thing that makes sense. But yeah, just like stuff like that. So okay, so you're doing this work, and what year did you start there?
Um, like full time?
Yes. I don't know. Were you there part time?
I was there. I grew up in the firm, so I was able to work on and off days whenever I
Mm,
had some breaks from high school and stuff like that too. So when I wasn't doing other internships. So I've been in the field for a very long time, but I started full time after school rather quickly,
right away. You're like, no vacations for
right
me. I'm
away.
going to work.
I know that's just how I am. My husband gets so mad at me sometimes for not taking breaks,
Yeah.
but
And what year was that?
2016.
Okay. So you've been there for about 5 years now. Well, at this
About,
capacity
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah, around close to
Uh,
7
and
now. Yeah.
very recently, I don't I don't know the exact where you're at position wise, but you've become like a lead partner at that firm, right?
Yeah, I am the majority owner of this firm.
Hmm.
Um, my dad is more than semi-retired, but still likes to poke his head in every now and then to make
Hmm.
sure I don't crash and burn. But yes, I am majority owner. I reached majority owner in 2020.
And what is your, outside of like majority owner or president, what is your title now in your field?
Project manager still,
Hmm.
plus principal.
And is that's like the highest? That's like what everybody aims to achieve, I suppose.
Um, Usually everybody would aim to achieve that coveted quote unquote architect.
Okay.
I'm going a little bit of a different route.
Hmm.
So, as I usually do, I do not have my license as to be an architect just yet. I
Mm.
am working on it. As you can tell, it's very intensive. Um, just a little breakdown on that. It's, I believe, 5 national exams and then a California state exam. So, hammering those away. But in the meantime, I do everything an architect does, just I can't legally sign my name to the plans.
Sure.
But also in a different business side, I can also hire architects to sign the plans and
Hmm.
to review the plans. So I'm in a little bit of a different position than the standard architect working at a firm.
Sure. No, I understand that. I have a friend who, um, I before I get into that, I'm fairly certain that's the most tests that I've heard that you have to take. That's like more than the bar. That's more than my buddy who's testing for his civil engineering stuff. I think they do 3 exams. That's a lot. That's a lot of exams.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think 2 or 3 of the exams are over 5 hours long.
Wow,
So,
that's intensive.
and I think the minimum is about 3 hours,
Hmm.
maybe. So,
I wouldn't be opposed to something. I think I sometimes forget if I've done a podcast on it or if I've just been doing the podcast in my head. But I've been talking about how there needs to be a better educate, like a better requirement system for realtors to make it more of like a respected and legitimate field, because it's not super difficult to get your license. But a lot of people have a lot of trouble doing the job effectively, right? And I think instead of doing, it's 175 questions or 150 questions, 2.5 hours, and you got to get a 70 on it or something. It was
Mm.
quite a bit of studying, but it's nothing as intensive as what you're doing. And I'm currently working on my broker's license as well. And that's a little more difficult, granted, and you have to have time in the field. But again, it's nothing as intensive as what you're doing, right? And granted, not for the most part, nothing we do is going to probably lead to anybody's deaths. Where if your building collapses or something, that's a pretty big problem. But um, I would think I would like to see something a little bit more like that. Um, there's I think 1.5 million realtors in the United States. It's a lot of realtors, So either way, enough about
Yeah.
that. But so you're going to be working your license. I get what you're doing, right? I mean, you have a business entity that you're working on. You're trying to build that, and you guys focus purely on commercial real estate, then.
Yes, commercial architecture. So we do a lot of tenant improvements. We do a lot of just regular offices. We've done restaurants. We've done medical offices.
Mm.
We're doing ground up buildings, wide range of different types of commercial.
So as it stands, our brokerage, for both real estate and home loans, deals with commercial. So I'm just curious, I don't know if you're the salesperson or who talks to who when they want to work with you guys, but what's your guys' kind of sales pitch, right? Like, I want to come in, I have some commercial properties that I want to get updated, or maybe I want to build something, what's your guys' kind of thing? You're like, I'm the youngest ever CEO, or I'm like, I'm killing it in the field, or what is it?
Oh, I'm so flattered. You made me blush. This may throw you for a loop. Usually a lot of the landlords that actually come and approach us and
Mhm.
do and request us to do the work. So I'm not really
Well,
right
how
now at the
long
moment.
did your dad have this business?
My dad's had this business since I think he opened the doors in 1980.
Okay, so
So it's
the
a
better
very
part of
well
30
established,
years.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very well established firm.
Mhm.
Um, so he was very lucky in his career to not have to do a lot of marketing
Mhm.
because the product that we produce is so the landlords are so happy with it and the
Mhm.
clients are so happy with it that it speaks on its own.
Sure.
So, but if a landlord does approach us, we have a catalog of our buildings that we've worked on for those 30, 40 years that
Right.
the business has been open. Um, Usually we'll have something in our catalog, like an old plan that we can go off of. And then if they want as built, which is just going out into the space and getting all of the existing items, the walls, ceiling, electrical outlets, the site, the parking location, all of that, that's where the project usually will start.
How much overlap is there from what you do to, let's say, what a contractor does? Like, could you tell me how much a box of nails costs right now, how much lumber costs, things like that? Or is that a little like below kind of what you would be doing? I don't want to say
Um,
below and say like a contractor would be below you, but I just mean that, it would be handled by somebody else.
that's definitely handled by somebody else, but um, I can't give you those numbers right off the top of my head.
Mm.
But I have been getting all of these different bids in,
Mm-hmm.
and I can tell you right now that this last year with inflation and everything, the cost of construction has just skyrocketed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm sure that, and if you look at the market in the real estate market, it reflects that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the interest rates are going up, or we're going up. The housing prices are going up tremendously. Um, and a lot of that has to deal back on our field of material.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of where that is. But I can't give you like a price per square foot on lumber right
Sure.
now.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know. So, but no, you're right. I mean, the strongest indicator for those sort of metrics in our field is new construction, right? When you see the price jumps in new construction because of, delays, inflation, price increases, things like that. I personally had to deal with that with some projects around our house, and I'm just like, Jesus, these 4x4s are crazy expensive. But no, it's really interesting. And so I'm curious, like, let's say, I own this granted, I don't, let's say I don't know you. I don't know your guys' business because I'm brand new to the area and I'm just looking around and I'm Googling the things like that. What sort of things should I be asking your guys' firm, when I'm considering bringing on an architect that would kind of educate me and educate anybody interested in what a good firm is and how we can know that they're competent and they're going to do the job well and they're going to do it ethically and we're not going to get ripped off. Like, how do we figure that sort of stuff out?
So I would start, if you start like with kind of any other blind search through Google, you're going to come across all of the different fields or different clients' websites,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then you're going to kind of check all different ones that you that interest you. You're going to see the projects that they've worked on. You're going to see their location. How close in proximity are they to you? I think it's important to look at that, because if I am working on a project that is 10 minutes from my office, I can easily get to that site and do meetings
Mm-hmm.
and make sure my client feels very comfortable. But if I'm here in Los Angeles and doing a project down in San Diego, I'm not going to be able to give that comfort to my client as easily.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say location is very important when trying to find a new architect, but it's not necessarily the only thing that you want to look at, right? Like, you want to see their client list, you want to see the type of work that they're doing, you want to see if they have any connections within like the community. Have they helped the community at all? What other types of community services have they been doing? Um, and then also, I would get a few proposals. I wouldn't stick to just one right away. I would get your feelers out. Um, there's some basics that we follow throughout the industry, but um, price is always negotiable. Just do your homework
Mm-hmm.
is what I would recommend.
Yeah, it's intimidating, right? Because most people don't know. I mean, look at me. Like, I'm in real estate. I have a pretty like firm grasp on what's going on here, and I don't know anything about your industry. I couldn't tell you who you work with. I couldn't tell you if you were even good at your job or your firm. The only thing I could say is, well, if you've been in business for 30 years, likely you guys have done a pretty good job of not getting sued out of business and continuing to get business and things like that, right? That would be the only real strong indicator for me outside of looking at something you guys have done and being like, oh, I like the way that looks, right? Um, so I think it's really interesting. We kind of talk about that in general, in on this podcast with how do you best gauge who to work with, right? Because it can be kind of a nightmare, and I'm sure you've heard of nightmare stories in your guys' industry of somebody going with somebody else and it not turning out very well. And I go back to my boy Ted Mosby when they designed the building that was, it was blinding airplanes. You got to really look out for these kind of businesses.
Yeah. I would say also another thing that would be a really great source to track down would be a commercial broker, because the brokers are we work hand in hand with brokers nearly every day.
Hmm.
It the the line kind of goes landlord, broker, architect. So the broker and the architect are mostly in communication with what the landlord would need.
Hmm.
And the brokers know all of the different architects within the area
Sure.
because I don't have every single building in the San Fernando Valley.
Hmm.
Like there are many architects here, but we do have a lot, and a lot of the brokers know that. So getting a broker or talking to a broker is very, very helpful within this field as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and a couple friends go back and forth on commercial brokers because they tend to be pretty awful at replying to people. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about commercial brokers, but
Oh no.
especially when we had our business in Midtown, and this was when I owned a gym and we were looking for a property to build on. There were always a couple of like vacant lots there that had brokers' information on there, which if you're putting up a sign where that should mean that you're trying to do business, we could never get anybody to get back to us. I could not understand this. And now that I've gotten into real estate, it's a little bit easier because I can say, well, I'm a VP at our real estate company or whatever. And I think maybe it's some sort of respect, but something about commercial real estate brokers, it just drives me nuts. It's so hard to get a hold of them. And I don't know why. I need to find one and figure out what's the deal. What's the inside on
Oh,
that.
you just come down to LA. There's so many of them here. I'm sure you'll be able to track one down.
Funny enough, we are opening a real estate brokerage in LA.
You are not.
We are. So we are in the process of expanding. We haven't officially, we have some stuff lined up, but I think we're going to be out in the Santa Monica area. And
Okay.
we're opening shop down there. We'll be traveling down there every so often. My broker more than I myself. And I think what'll end up happening is we're going to be expanding down there and working the coastal areas, working our
Mhm.
way down, then working our way back up and trying to meet from Sacramento, from LA and meet somewhere in the middle. Right.
That's so exciting.
So we're really excited about that. Very possible that I'll be able to come and stop in and be like, I know this person, I know her. But no, yeah. So it's really exciting. I did want to ask, so what are your guys' plans? And I don't want to like be like, hey, tell us your whole 10-year plan and like reveal all of your secrets about this, but your dad sustained this business for 30 years, right? I mean, we're in a different economy now.
Yeah.
We're on the precipice of moving in, and depending on who you follow, your economists or whatever, but there's a lot of words about being in a pretty serious recession next year. Um, I'm curious, what are you guys looking at, and you kind of brought up like, we'll work with, it's kind of like real estate. We say work with the local realtor, right? And you're saying like work with
Mhm.
your local architect. And so, what does that look like for you? Like, do you guys want to expand into different areas and open up different shops, or is it just really about maintaining a stronghold where you guys are and being that community service for your guys' self and kind of maintaining that sort of system that you guys have had?
Yeah, so, um, one of my main goals is to expand. I would love to have offices with a S
Mm,
across the country. I would love to get into the development side and to be able to, hmm, let's see. Now, so it's been a huge shift, right? Like the pandemic kind of threw everybody for a loop
mm-hmm,
here. Architecture is a very, very collaborative field. We work together all the time. And so when the pandemic happened and we had to close our doors and move everybody to work remotely, it was a big shift for the industry as a
mm-hmm.
whole. And now that that has become a solid foundation as well, it's very possible to be able to expand into different counties, different states, and just picking up on the specific codes for that state,
Mm,
it's easier to expand than not.
sure.
So, from my father's generation, holding down one firm within the San Fernando Valley was ideal.
Hmm.
It's a metropolitan area, it's high pace, a lot of clients.
Hmm.
I now want to expand the business into different sectors, and
Hmm.
that is my main goal. Within the next 5 to 7 years, I want to establish a business out of California.
Mm. Well, I don't, I'm just throwing some ideas out there, but I don't know if you heard Sacramento is kind of the place to be right now. And we're on the top 10 of every list in real estate right now. And so a lot of industry coming this way. And I think they're probably going to need some buildings designed and stuff like that. So definitely something to consider.
Oh, I love Sacramento. It will always have a special place in my heart.
It is a great so I've been to LA a few times and granted I didn't realize how big LA is.
Mhm.
In my head I always thought that it was like I don't know. I don't know what I thought, but it's huge, right? And one of our friends is actually funny enough, my wife is flying out to LA this weekend for a girls trip. So she'll be out there. We have a friend out there that we're trying to visit, but it's such a cool place. There's a lot going on there. There's a ton of money in real estate out there. There's a lot of people that need houses and second houses and third houses and beach houses. So
Mhm.
we're happy to help with that. Um, but Sacramento, I really like how it still has like a small town feel to it, even though it's been growing so much, and it's still pretty affordable. I think that's the biggest thing for everywhere. LA, San Jose, San Francisco, three most expensive spots in California. So
Yeah.
it's pretty wild, but it would be cool if you had a brokerage up here because we're the capital, California, baby. So
I mean, I won't lie that it hasn't crossed my mind going back to my old stomping ground.
mhm. Exactly. We have a
So,
brokerage we're also in um, South Carolina as well because one of our brokers that was here is now there. And so we branched out to South Carolina as well. So we're in multiple states, no big deal.
I have to catch up.
No, but I don't think you thought that this time would ever come, but we are pretty much at the end of this podcast.
Oh,
Exactly.
no.
So before we do get off, I wanted to give you the opportunity I don't think you've actually said your guys' business name or exactly where you're located or
I don't think I have.
what your guys' website is. So if people are in the LA area and they are in commercial real estate and they want to work with a business that's been in for a very long time and they have a brand new vibrant leader who smashed it in school and has been around the architecture firm since she was 3 years old. How can they reach you guys? How can they find you?
So, my company's name is Henny Dong and Associates. You can find us at www.hennydongarchitects.com. And we also have social media on Instagram. We are HDA underscore architects. Nope, sorry, architecture. HDA underscore architecture. Or you can just give us a call on numbers on our website. We have all of our information there. Be happy to help you as much as we can.
And as always, we will make sure that we include all of this information in the bio. And when we post it, that way it's easy for you guys to find if you did not write all of that down at this very moment. Outside of that, thank you for being on so much. I really appreciate it. A little bit of insight into commercial architecture, your experience. Maybe at some point we'll have a larger kind of forum that you can be on where we have, commercial broker and you and a realtor and some other key people, maybe a contractor who can tell us how much a box of nails are. And we can all talk together. So, again, I appreciate it. As always, guys, this is the Hard Money Show where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. You guys have a great night.